Sorry, they got me doing more than one thing at once, so it might take a little while. We are started. So, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are joining us, be that here in London, live at the teissTalk 3 conference, or from LinkedIn, or even from our website. Now, I do have here a laptop which has got the chat section of the website. So I can take questions if you're joining us online, but I will also be taking questions from the audience throughout as well. This is our first session of the new, I was going to say season, but that's very American, isn't it? New series of teissTalk after our summer break. We'll be back on the airwaves next week as well, the 25th. So, without further ado, can I please introduce onto the stage here John from Veracode, our lovely sponsors, Tiago, Paul, Jay and JC. Woo! Since we're live, you have to applaud at everything they do. You know, we don't normally get the feedback, you know, from the show. So let's move on, shall we, to our news story. And our news story comes from friends of the show at Info Security Magazine. And it's basically extending that story of the Salesloft drift hack. More companies have become victims of it. Qualys and Tenable are the latest ones. Now, the campaign, this whole campaign has involved the theft of OAuth authentication tokens connected to Salesloft Drift, which is, in case you didn't know, a third-party application integrated with Salesforce used to automate workflows. So it fits in nicely with our main theme about third-party risk. Now, it seems to me that a bit like the M&S hack, which wasn't just any kind of hack, it was an M&S hack. This is the hack that just keeps on giving, in that every single week there seems to be more and more people, you know, being exposed to this. Why is that? Why is this not addressed? Or is it, you know, because the data's out there, there's just more to be mined?
I think it's a chain problem. In the end of the day, we are so interconnected, and our suppliers depend on other suppliers, and our business depend on so many other businesses, and the way that they are interconnected, that there is a cascading effect every time there is a data breach of any kind. But there is also, I think, a lot of responsibility from quite a few organizations within this sector that you are exposing too much. One of the problems as a CISO, every time that I need to do a due diligence on a new supplier, for example, and we do this on a regular basis. Every single supplier, we need to do a proper threat modeling of what are the risks that this supplier brings. First thing that comes to my mind, their API exposes too much. I don't have mutual authentication on the API connection, and that is the beginning of the show. If anything like this points out, is that we have fundamental issues in the way that we are interconnecting our business with the others, from too many permissions and too much data access, to lack of basic mutual authentication mechanisms that would prevent things like this.
I think the thing that's really interesting for me about the Salesloft drift hack is this is something I would view more as a fourth-party risk rather than a direct third-party risk. Salesloft drift has had a compromise of their OAuth API token. Drift has integrations with, I think, about 50 different vendors, one of which is Salesforce, which I think just because of Salesforce's popularity, they've been getting a lot of the heat and attention on the media. There's actually about 50 integrations and different products and platforms that could be compromised and are being compromised because of this drift attack. What we've got is, you know, a company will engage with Salesforce and have a third-party due diligence process with them. Salesforce will have an integration with Drift. And it really comes down to, do we have the bandwidth, the resources, time, and even the understanding to go and assess that fourth-party risk?
I think it's taken it to the next level. You know, we've had third-party supplier issues for years. You can go back to the Target one with the HVAC. But I think what's happened more recently is we've been looking at suppliers that have access into your networks, But actually what we're finding is, think of CrowdStrike last year and the NPN stuff, is actually your third parties that are actually got software that you're using. And this is kind of taking that kind of supply chain problem to a different level. It's something that I think most supply chain managers and people like that hadn't really thought of until kind of, I think the CrowdStrike one last year had happened. That was kind of one of the first, certainly large scale ones where it was an actual vendor that had caused the problem. Like I said, we're used to dealing with companies that are directly connecting in via VPN or an MPLS or whatever it is. But this is kind of a different level that we're now having to think about and deal with.
I think one thing that really changes the game here with the drift hack actually is every time we've looked at supply chain compromise or the kind of the cascading ripple effect when one supplier has a business interruption event and how that ripples across other organizations, it's always been an availability concern. We've always had that business interruption. We're like, okay, whoa, what do we do now? We've lost, the business is interrupted. With this Salesloft drift hack, there's not really a business interruption concern.
Yeah.
This is a systemic risk that has led to lots of data breaches. We're now concerned with the confidentiality of the data that's being breached, not business interruption. So I think it's a great example of supply chain compliance is actually evolving beyond what we've seen before.
So just to take that one step further, I'd almost argue it's a fifth party breach.
Yeah, a little
When
bit.
did you
Let me take you on that journey a little
I
bit.
think we've gone on that journey, yeah.
Because so Salesforce, for any organization that uses it, like we were talking about before, the data that is in there is absolute gold for us.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's the heart of our business. That's not what the attackers were looking for. What the attackers were actually looking for were credentials,
Yes.
I think primarily found in support cases
Yes.
that were in there. So it was actually the fifth part
Yeah.
to, that's my argument for fifth
No,
part.
absolutely. And I think what we need to now be concerned with is with the data that's being stolen. It's very much, are there credentials that we have hard coded in our environments that now need to be rotated and switched out, which very much comes down to us engaging with the third or fourth party and saying, look, out of interest, what data do you actually store about them? Can you just send that to me because I need to know what I need to rotate? The second bit is back to the Salesforce piece. There's going to be data there which tells you about who is involved in procurement and finance for approving invoices and transactions. Those people are going to be fished very quickly.
Yeah. And in both cases, at least both these cases, because there's a litany of other companies that have been affected. These two are the most recent. Both Qualys and Tenable have said that their actual platforms have not been affected, which is not surprising because it's sales data that they were looking at or potential sales data. So the platforms themselves. So interesting to your point, John, that the attack was not at Qualys and Tenable. It's to try and get their customer details and their customer contacts, etc. So when it comes to, I hate to point fingers because we're all very good at victim blaming here and all that sort of thing. But is this on companies like Qualys and Tenable, or is this on Salesloft?
I think as an industry issue, as I pointed out in the beginning, Salesloft just used the normal, and I'm not defending Salesloft in any way, shape or form. They need to be accountable for what happened with them. But if you think across all the systems that we use, the first question for everyone is, are you happy with the APIs that are presented to you to consume on any business case? My answer to 99% of them is no. Again, they expose too much, or most of the times I cannot lower the permissions that by default are set on that API. And again, mutual authentication is not there. So again, I steal the key. I have access to the kingdom.
Equally, hating point fingers, I do think there was quite a significant gap between when Salesloft were originally breached, which allowed the attackers to start searching for the overall
6 months roughly, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was between March when they think they were originally breached, and then it was I think June or July that they actually started retrieving OAuth tokens, and in between there was presumably a whole bunch of reconnaissance and tiptoeing around that was going on. It does feel like that was a window of opportunity for this to have been identified and stopped. So it does seem perhaps Salesloft could have been doing a better job of maintaining their own security. Once that then once it then went on and they did have the OAuth tokens, yeah, I mean, as you say, there are fundamentals, I think.
Fundamentals, yeah.
Fundamentals that,
Other controls that should have been
yeah.
in place. I mean, in fairness, the 6 months is the industry average dwell time. So it was less than that.
In a day and age where we have KMSs in place that allows us to rotate non-human credentials at a pace, we can even rotate them automatically every month. There is no excuse for situations like this. If you have even a suspicious of a data breach, in my humble opinion, is that, okay, if you have at least a suspicion, you inform your clients, say, out of excess of care, let's rotate the keys, let's make sure that even if worst case scenario, you rotated the keys. Okay, sorry, it took maybe your teams a few hours more to rotate the keys across the systems, but you take a pragmatic approach.
I think one thing that's quite interesting that we do, probably I will point a finger at, is there are common control frameworks that we use to baseline our security posture against, like the NIST cybersecurity framework, which has elements of cryptography in it. It says thou must encrypt, thou must have ways for measuring non-repudiation and controlling this. There's not a lot in there that actually talks about managing cryptographic materials.
It does actually.
I don't think it
Well,
does.
there is the rotation of keys is in there, and best practice for rotation of keys. They're annual,
Yeah.
but in my perspective,
think you
again, you could do better.
Yeah.
Again,
Very traditional one.
the approach of NIST is what you see, for example, in PCI, and I am a little bit always frustrated with PCI DSS because they take a long time to deal with things because of other commercial pressures. But again, the frameworks are just the bare minimums that you should be doing. Anything above that is between you and your input in your cybersecurity strategy.
We have the same issue with regulations, right? We view it as a ceiling, as an aspirational target, not the floor.
No, it should be a, yeah, exactly.
It's the floor, and then
not
you
the
go higher.
ceiling.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's move on to the panel proper, where we're talking about, from gatekeeping to guardrails, proactive supply chain security at scale. So one of the stats we've got here is 70% of critical security debt stems from third-party code. That's a huge task to try and unpick, to quote a previous panel. That's a huge task to unpick when it comes to analysing your third-party security code, especially if we're talking about anything to do with open source, for instance. And we saw this with was it the Log4j that came out, and large companies were asking, well, individuals who were maintaining binaries in their spare time to demand an S-bomb from them, and they're like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's on you. Where do we even start on something like this? How do you address something like this at scale?
Oh, very simply, you hire someone like our friends here at Veracode. Oh, sorry, it's not the sales pitch. I have no affiliation with Veracode, and they're even my suppliers, so I'm completely transparent. Or the competition, or open source tools, and that's the first thing. You need to know what you have in house. You need to know if you have transitive dependencies in your code. Are they called in some point in the code or not? So one, you need to know what is your SBOM in there at the bare minimum. Two, you need to understand if the libraries and when they're called, or at least the ones that have been flagged, like recently, for example, with NPM, the two recent attacks that we've seen, it took me 5 minutes to understand if I had any exposure or not in my company. 5 minutes, it's not a long time. Sometimes a bit more complex, for example, Log4j, because the word dependencies inside of dependencies, and sometimes you need to analyze with the developers. It needs to be a common effort between security developers and architects to understand if at any given point that vulnerability is being called in the code or not. If not, yeah, you might have even today Log4j vulnerable in there, just sitting there, is never called, is never used, is not a vulnerability per se, it's just there.
So, 5-minute problem.
I think that's when you come to the second problem, which depends on the organization that you're working for. If it's a large organization with a lot of entities and devices and assets, then you will find a very big problem, because you overloaded with data. Overloaded. I work for some organization where we have like 20, 50,000 critical vulnerabilities. How do you prioritize that? And if you even try, it's a really hard work. So doing that is the bare minimum. But then the next phase is, which everyone needs to think, and is a hard problem to solve if you don't do this yourself, develop yourself, is how do you prioritize? And when you have 20,000 critical vulnerabilities, good luck.
EPSS, the best thing that again, thank you first.org and everyone behind it for DPSS is not perfect, not give you the necessary in real-time threat intelligence. But if you kept a CVSS, you know, again, your infrastructure well, and you apply DPSS, you have a really great metrics to be able to prioritize what you have to address.
Well, CVSS is
EPSS, the exploitability.
Oh, I'm
factor.
sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
sorry.
It's fine.
So go on, explain that. I think you said CVSS.
DPSS or exploitability index is real metrics about how often do we see the exploitation of a particular vulnerability by threat actors. So if you multiply the value of the CVSS version 3 or 4 total, or just the version 4 with DPSS, you would get a good metric about the risk that you would get from that specific
A more
vulnerability.
contextual mix.
A much more contextualized metrics, because if there is no exploitability index or is 0, then the probability that someone is exploiting that vulnerability is low. The only problem is this changes every day, sometimes even hours, because as any attackers, they will adapt, they will pick up new vulnerabilities, but out of the box, most threat actors will have their own well-defined TTPs that they will use. Some of them are a bit more agile, especially the newer ones, but in general, they stick with the things that they know well and to know exploit well, because again, they are humans like us, they're lazy by default, so they will not spend a lot of time unless the amount of targets that they're getting does not pay off for what they're trying to achieve.
And I highly agree if you just want to rely on industry tools. I don't know, of course, sorry, Veracode. I use Veracode. I actually want to talk to you. So
Later.
yeah.
We're in the way.
So you have to use these tools. And if you want to go easy, or at least use the best priority, what is there in the industry that they have built, EPSS is the best. But for example, depending on the organization, at least my experience, it's not enough at all.
No.
And there are different problems to be solved here, aren't there? So, you know, on the one hand, we can assess what we've already got and we can figure out where we have holes, and yet tools and technologies can absolutely help with that. And then there's trying to stop ourselves from creating more problems. And those, I think, are actually two quite different use cases. Trying to stop us having more problems, I think, should be the easy problem to solve, right? I mean, you can embed these kind of technologies, Veracode or another, you embed that into the software engineering process, and you can see there is a problem, and you can stop that problem from ever making it into production, you know, providing you've got sufficient buy-in.
Yeah, with the right culture change, involvement,
Yeah.
etc., it can be quick.
So that can be quick. The hard one, though, is that mass of stuff you've already got.
Yeah.
Because yes, prioritization matters here. You know, where should we focus our effort? And yeah, EPSS or KEV and your CVSS scoring and, you know, all feed into that. But also feeding into that is, you know, where we found the problem and the business value that that represents to us.
Exploit paths,
Exploit paths.
legacy, technical depth.
But also, just how much work is it going to be to address this problem?
That's why I don't think it's still sustainable. Just using those metrics, I mean, depends on the bit, right? Again, if it's a small to medium-sized business with not much development in-house, definitely doable.
Yeah.
For my organization, definitely wasn't doable. We had to do something much more advanced than that, not advanced, but to resolve this problem. So I think it really depends from business to business. I don't think there's
It's just
an answer.
Agree.
But because you need the organizational context, what and what is in, what is out, how can you reach it, where does it go? So there's many other things that you need to do to really understand and prioritize. Because some vulnerabilities you don't have to fix ever. It's going to be there for 50 years. Because it's that server there that you access internally to get there. You have this. And the end of the game, the end of this, you know, it's all about defense in depth, right? There are things which is unnecessary, just put on the side. But it's a very hard problem to tackle if you don't understand what you have to do, or what good looks like, which
Yeah.
you know, what is good looks like. Yeah, for this business.
I think one of the big challenges that I come across quite often as well, and I'd like to see if you agree with this as well, is understanding who really owns the risk and who can accept the risk. Because your traditional risk manager will understand business value and whether they care about this being attacked and compromised, but they don't understand the vulnerability, and they're not meant to understand the vulnerability. It takes a lot of effort to do that. Sometimes we don't even understand the vulnerability. We have to do our own research on it, let alone ask someone who's coming in fresh to do that. So we could own the risk, but then if we own the risk,
No, why
think-
would you?
as security people,
Why would you? You're not making the decisions.
Exactly.
Maintain the technical
No.
debt with the
Yeah.
CTO. No,
we're
no,
not
no.
going to accept anything. No.
And putting your head on the chalkboards
Oh,
for decision is not yours.
we're already doing that, but
I
anyway.
hope they pay you well.
Yeah.
I would really hope they pay you well.
I think Chief Information Sacrificial Officer.
No, just not officer.
Put you all
Just not officer.
I think we're missing potentially a fundamental step here, which it comes back to one of the basics, asset management.
Mhm.
We need to understand what we've got. You
Yeah.
said that stat with 70% of it coming
Yeah.
from third parties. We actually need to understand primarily which third parties those are coming from, but that asset management needs to go deeper, as in what it is specifically in that application. So the kind of the SBOM type things, but even just some core basics around what the operating system is, what kind of what is open source, what is in source, and all those other kind of things to get a bit of a basic understanding of the application before we can get to those next steps.
Absolutely.
The other problem we've got there is that, well, what analysis paralysis, right? Like, how deep do you go? Where can you?
When do you stop?
You know,
Yeah.
You've got dependencies on dependencies on dependencies.
Yeah,
When can you
exactly.
say stop.
Well, we've got oh my goodness, we've got 3 questions online now. So from Rebecca Morgan, hi all, this is cool seeing it live like this. So hello, Rebecca. How are you moving security upstream to address the 70% of critical debt from third-party code? Kind of answered this already, but in a sentence, what is that?
I think is a combination of 2 things, threat modeling and risk assessment, due diligence before you onboard a supplier. If you already have the supplier in, you still need to do an assessment on it. It will be a bit too late if you discover that all of a sudden a critical supplier have a pileup of risks, but it does happen more
Yeah.
often than we would like. But then again, someone will sign it off, or you need to have an exit strategy and plan to onboard a different supplier if that is too much for your risk appetite.
When you say third-party code, is the third-party code that we have access as a business, or is the third-party code that we don't have access?
I don't know, ask Rebecca.
Because we don't have access, there's nothing about that,
Yeah.
right? We can put the compensated controls around it.
And sometimes
Yeah.
it's not even a security problem. So a lot of the times that I've done when I arrive to a company, do an assessment on their code, is licensing problem. More often than not, they are using software that they shouldn't be using
Yes,
because
Yeah.
this was released under very.
that's a chunk of that 70%, right? At the
It's
end of it.
actually a major problem, and then sometimes finding a suitable library to replace that is a headache on its
Yep.
own.
WinZip has a lot to answer for.
And remember, yeah.
I'm going to move on. Let's get through these questions. So, Maria Baluna, hello, Maria. How do you use real-time threat intelligence to automatically enforce policies in your CI/CD pipeline?
Policies.
I'm not sure we've got enough time today.
I think this point is actually a fantastic question. Policies not that much, but mitigation actions definitely. So as soon as you understand what is the payload that will trigger the vulnerability, sometimes it's not easy because if they are doing a proper disclosure, you will not be able to understand how you can exploit. But in certain positions and in certain places, potentially, I've been put in place automation that as soon as you receive the threat intelligence, you automatically put a WAF rule that will prevent the exploitation of that vulnerability. That will be a great example. The problem is the validation and understanding the business impact at speed. You really need to have a fantastic team behind you to be able to do that.
So I think even the question, it leads to that commonly used quote, you know, the future's here, it's just not evenly distributed.
Yeah.
And for someone that is wrestling with that as a problem, they're way ahead of the pack already.
First world problems.
It definitely falls in the first
Even
world
asking the question is,
that's
Just next question.
where.
But just to, I mean, policy is very easy, like to create a policy to block, to not do A, to not do B. super easy. Of course, it depends on the platform that you use. That you
Easy, I love that.
but because
The
it's
policy is easy.
it's usually by
18 months later, still haven't rolled out the policy.
it's by default, the system provides this capability. So it's usually very easy, just go there, select
Yeah.
this. But of course, it's for you to decide on that policy and make it happen.
Yeah.
But usually OCI/CD systems.
That actually is not a joke, Tom, because more often than not,
I
a
know.
lot of companies have a scaffolding holding the security on the WAF.
Do you think I said 18 months randomly? I'm on a t-shirt. We've got a question from Clive Peterson here. He's asked two. I'm going to ask the second one, actually. How do you ensure threat intelligence doesn't create new bottlenecks or false positives? Now, we had a panel on threat intelligence earlier, so it's kind of related. I mean, if you've got threat intelligence about a third party, about whatever, how do you ensure it doesn't create new bottlenecks or false positives? As validation of your threat intelligence.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course, because again, as we speak, you guys went to the panel before, you need to validate everything that you consume.
Yeah.
Regardless of the source of the data. If it's trustworthy, great. If it's not trustworthy, then what is the impact on you? Again, what was the 3 whats that you were talking about before?
Yes. So what? Was it so what? What now?
I
Something like
used the
that.
5 whys, but
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
different.
No, I was deeply moved so much that I've forgotten them. But yes, it was along those lines, wasn't it?
And that don't just work for threats itself, but most of the things that you identify, you just need to make sure it's a valid thing
Yeah.
Valid and relevant.
and relevant.
Let's open up to the audience in reality. Any hands going up for a question for our audience, for our panel, even you're the audience?
Maybe they want to talk to each other.
Yeah, we talk to each other. Yeah, exactly. No, then
One at a time, please.
let's move on. God, you put me on the spot now. So one of the bullet points here is why DORA and modern CI/CD pipelines demand preemptive visibility and automation. So effectively, why is regulation saying we should know this stuff up front?
Because we had too many incidents.
Yeah, yeah, because we only have, what is it, 12 hours now under DORA?
Yeah.
12 or 24 hours?
12.
12 to notice.
12 to report and then 24 to
Right,
actually
to-
provide evidence that it
Yeah.
happened or didn't happen.
And virtually daily after that.
Yes.
Yeah.
They would just knock on your door and say,
Again,
give us data.
too many data breaches, too many business not doing the right things. We all see that the regulators just step in when people misbehave, right? So the same is normal for organizations. And again, banking system is it is the core of our critical infrastructure. Unless we want to go in a full communist that there is no money, we just trade goods or services and there is no more money in the world. Yeah, come on.
This is one thing that I never really understood and had faced some troubles to some organizations I work for, which is, not being clear, even internally, on the things which you're not good at and the things you're good at, and then how do you do. But, it's all about the risk management of the things that you're aware and you're working on it. And this is all they want to know. But some organizations still try to be very defensive and, no, we're really bad here, let's hide it. Which I still don't get it. And regulators, I usually love working with them because they're very simple. Like, just tell us, yeah, here we go. Oh, you have this problem, you have a big problem. Oh, don't worry, we manage this for this risk. Okay, cool. That's it.
I think the other side of the regulation is that they don't care about you and your little problems. They care about the impacts it has on
Ecosystem.
society and on people
Exactly.
as a whole.
They care that you know that you have a problem.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And they don't care that, oh, that's difficult to do that. That's not the point.
Exactly.
Then you need to find an easier way to do it.
Yeah, as long as you can demonstrate visibility of your environment and attack surface, and you know where there are threats and opportunities for exploitation. As long as you can do that, that's a lot. That's
Well, and a forward direction.
having a remediation path is great. You can get help on that. You can talk to people about that. It's there. But I think at least in my experience with regulators, when I talk to them, if I don't have the remediation path, but I have identified the problems, that's good. It could be better. If I'm just saying I have no problems, there's nothing to worry about, I have zero visibility, that's where I get into a lot of trouble.
I think the other part with that as well is making sure that you kind of make them aware of the decisions you've made
Yeah.
and why you were in that situation. Because as long as you've got proper documented decisions, we did this because of X, it was too expensive to implement, so we've done this instead.
This
As long as you've got
information we have,
answers, they're
yeah.
normally pretty good.
That audit trail is very
Again,
important.
all of this, nothing new. This is risk management 101. You have a problem, you have a solution. What is the time to implement a solution? Well, the thing that baffles me is needs to come a door into place for something as simple as risk management be implemented in the company. That is the part where I really, as JC was saying, that I really struggle to understand that. It's like you're doing accounting, right? You know what money comes in, it comes out. Why don't you do the same with cybersecurity?
And what worries me more is that these are basic stuff.
Yeah.
So if you only do that, you will get hacked. So, anyway, but,
Different friends.
yeah, different
I
topic.
think the bigger problem you've got though is the regulators having to do this because we're not doing this, but we all know we need to be doing this, but the business doesn't still recognise fully that we need to be doing these things. And that's where the regulators at least kind of help to a point, because that suddenly focuses the board and they go, oh, maybe we need to do something about this. We'll go and talk to the cyber team.
I think the business is getting better with it. Yeah, they appreciate cyber as a board level issue. They understand there's a risk and they understand that there's a lot of unknowns that need to be managed. The challenge is, and we've always known this, is cybersecurity is not a revenue generator for the business.
Oh, yes, it is. I am sorry to say. Oh, no.
Very much.
We all know it is, but proving it and for the business to believe it.
That is part of your job as a CISO. I am sorry to say this, and please feel free to punch me if you can, is as a CISO, you need to be able to demonstrate what is the value that you bring to the business. Not just the money.
I mean, this is a whole other panel, let's face it.
Let's be more clear though. I think, there is value that you are bringing as a CISO with cybersecurity to enable the business and to help them.
No. Leverage cybersecurity and data privacy as fundamental parts of the sales pitch of most of the companies.
Yeah.
I don't think there are many out there that would not thrive by using security and data privacy as part of their sales pitch. Very few. Actually, if there is anyone in the room that have an example where security and data privacy could not be part of the sales pitch of the company, please raise your hand and share with us, because that would be really interesting to see that.
Go on, I dare you.
There we go.
Right, let me just pivot away from this. So John, you mentioned in the prep call about the SDLC side and how we can look into this a little better. And you used the phrase that I think we've been using possibly for nearly 10 years now, shift left. Although technically it should be shift everywhere, really. But the shift left, this concept of let's get security in, sorry, my left, your right, into the earlier phases of the software delivery lifecycle. You said, but what about legacy code? What about the code that already exists?
Yeah.
You can't shift left into that.
No. Well, not really. It's already done, so you can't go all the way left on that. But it's going to require ongoing maintenance. It's going to require work on it. And if you are going to address any of the technical or security debt that exists in there, you are going back into a software engineering process, at which point you absolutely can.
And security debt as defined is open findings for more than a year, effectively, which is not a long period of time when it comes to some of this legacy code.
I mean, absolutely not when it comes to
COBOL.
COBOL.
Yeah.
COBOL being a great example.
I can see a few grey hairs in the audience nodding wisely at that word. Yeah.
But it's as I mentioned earlier, these kind of two problems. This is the cleaning up the mess that's already there problem, and it's a non-trivial problem to solve. Each individual instance of this is a non-trivial, and the longer it's been there, probably the less trivial it becomes even bigger problem.
Yeah.
Because now you've got a component that you need to upgrade, and you added that component 2 years ago, 3 years ago. By now, that component has moved on several major versions. To simply drop in the new version of that, everything else in the application is about to break, or everything that is connected to that component is probably going to break because the APIs will have changed, the data model will have changed, and so on. I think that's why there is so much of the bigger, the more critical security debt does tend to be in third-party components, because it really is a non-trivial problem to resolve. It comes back to prioritization.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not going to be able to fix everything because there is too much and it's too expensive, let's fix the most important things. I did slight side note, there was this comment about who owns the risk.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is a one-off. I would almost like to think this is the beginning of a trend. Recently met with a potential customer, and we needed to present upwards. And the person that we presented to was the chief financial officer, who in that particular organization now owns cybersecurity.
I've dealt with
Because
that.
it's a risk to the business. It's a financial risk to the
brother,
business.
I've
Yeah.
worked somewhere where that has
Likewise.
been the case as well.
And actually, it was very good.
And I see a huge benefit to that.
Oh, I don't know.
No.
You just
My
want to be a teacher, that's
personal experience, I've rather worked with the CFO than, for example, with the CTO, because the CTO is the person that you need to check their work.
Oh, I'd agree with that.
It is extremely difficult. It can go both ways, either really bad or really good. If you have a CTO that understands and you have a great relationship with him or her, fantastic. It's a CTO that is becoming very defensive because, in their words, you are making them look bad.
Yes.
Oh,
Well, they're also, you know, their objectives are very
Mhm.
different to yours, you know, the filtration of your messages upwards, etc. So, but the CFO, again, very, I don't want to say, well, I'll say it, siloed view. It's purely financial when it's not just purely financial.
it is. Every
Well,
single,
mind you, everything is financial. Yes,
every single risk
Yeah.
either costs money or costs people's time.
which costs money.
Costs money.
Yeah.
So it is about money. That's why I'm saying that if you cannot go to your board and explain how you can bring value to the business, you are not doing a CISO role properly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been in that situation before as well, previous place where the CFO was the head of the Information Security Committee, and it seemed to work pretty well. It was interesting because they headed up the committee, but InfoSec still reported into the CIO. So it was an interesting.
Oh, was it solid line, dotted line?
It was, yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Even worse.
But the CFO ultimately having the responsibility for InfoSec like that, you did get some quite decent backing out of it like that. It's an interesting challenge.
Does it change for you the conversation that you're having, I guess the metrics that you're bringing up? Look, there was again, I'm going to mention Gartner. There was a really good Gartner presentation I saw on the subject of, it was to do with metrics. I can't remember what they called these metrics, but the principle was they could go to senior leadership and say, well, look, if you want a one-day patch cycle, we can do that. It's going to cost this much.
Well, it goes back to
can have a 30-day patch
Yeah.
cycle, and it's going to cost this much.
So it's now, so what now, how much? How much?
And ultimately, it is
Yeah.
how much, because a business is going to have to
tend to focus the conversation more around the financial implications of how much is it going to cost and kind of how much is it going to save. You know, your ROI is much more important in the conversation with the CFO. Definitely. But I mean, when you're talking to that level, I'm not a fan of metrics anyway.
There are a few that I like to put in place. So, for example, if you go to a board meeting talking about vulnerabilities, they yawn at you and like roll their eyes until they can see the back of their head. But if you go there and present, these are the risks, these are the costs if these risks materialize, and these are the costs of mitigating these risks. Every single board across multiple business, across multiple verticals that I've worked, they get it. You show them what is a return on investment in security, they fully understand it, but you need to put the money into the conversation more than anything. Risk and money.
Coming back to that point that we made around, you know, why did the regulations have to do this to force people to you know, take actions? One of the challenges I've seen in several organizations is if the person in charge of making the decision has not personally gone through a security attack, an event, then to them it's, okay, yeah, you're telling me that this is how much it's going to cost if something goes wrong, but I've never seen it go wrong, so I don't think it will happen. How would you get around that conversation?
That's a decision on its own, right? So
That's
you
risk. That's a risk decision, then, isn't it?
exactly.
That's a,
So that's why the first thing that I go to a company is, okay, who are the risk owners?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm making the decisions. You are the risk owner, the CFO, the CTO, the CISO, whoever sits at the C level, those are the risk owners. They will cascade to whoever they decided to help on the mitigation. But if they are the ones making the decisions, they are the data, the risk, and the system owners, period. And if they don't believe in it, well, you believe in whatever you are. I present all the information that I can, all the proper business case with all the explanation and with metrics from the industry, even sometimes if from the insurance companies, they do this as a business, as you know. And if they decided not to believe it, well, that's their choice.
A very quick opinion I have on this, which is quite strong, and I might get a few haters. Which is,
Not live, you'll be fine.
which
Edit it out later, it'll be fine.
We guess what you'll replace.
we'll take it out. Oh, don't worry.
which is when I hear people saying, "Oh, but they don't listen to me." "Oh, but it's easier to deal with a CFO." "Oh, but I keep telling, but they don't believe." Again, this is the hard truth. It's that's your problem.
Yeah.
It's a you problem, not a them problem.
Yeah, you are unable to understand what is important to that person that you need to please in terms of to get what is right for the business. And then you just go mad. But every person in this world that you work with, there's a way to get to that person. And it's your job. Sorry, not saying your job. Yes, sir.
That's all right.
It's your job to get sufficient information. Sometimes it takes 6 months. Sometimes I work for a business that took me 8 months to get the person on my side, my boss, who hired me to do something, 8 months for that person to listen to me, to approve a strategy. But it's your job to do that. But because if the company get hacked next day, who do you think is going to be the fault? Yes, not them.
No.
But you have
no,
to,
that's
I
the
think
thing.
what helps is understanding, like, what is someone personally measured on? If you know what they're measured on and how they, effectively, what's the criteria for them to come out as successful, and you position the solutions to your problems as this will help make you look successful,
Correct.
you typically get buy-in very quickly.
Also, you cannot be held accountable, and even if you go to court, you will not be held accountable if you are not the decision maker. So why would you be?
Oh, no, 100%. Like accountability means, for example,
You did your best.
let's say, if we get a bridge tomorrow and you haven't managed to get the message to your boss, it is 100% your fault, in my opinion. I say fault of because the bridge happened and you didn't manage to get the message. Is it fault because you are liable? No, definitely not. You cannot be liable. Liable is all the way to the.
There is a really great saying in UK that you can take the horses to the water, but you cannot force them to drink, right? And you can put whatever water.
It's not thirsty.
There you go.
Hang on, that's not the same.
I like that.
Risk appetite. They have no appetite for what you're putting in front of them. Does not please them because instead of giving you 20,000, they want to put 20,000 in the new sales system because that will bring money to the team.
Well, that's different. Yeah. For example, if you present something and they say, we still don't want to do it, and you're confident you have done everything you've done, perfect. That's amazing. The document is in the risk register that I have tried to resolve A, B, C.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, you decided that this is not right. Job done. Yeah.
So I thought we were going to go without a question from the audience, but we do have one just here. This will be the last thing we take before we have a quick summary. So yes, sir.
Hi. I'm going to take us back a little bit around the software moving left. The statement you guys made is the legacy stuff is not. But if we look at the systems now, especially with AI, there's a lot of tooling out there which is moving a lot of this old code into new codes, which is allowing us to move left, making it a lot more secure, bringing down the cost because we don't have to reinvent them. And I think when we are looking at vulnerabilities and that, we should be considering going down this path because we've got the capabilities now. Time, it reduces the time factor, it reduces the resourcing to get these things done. And I think we shouldn't miss that from any of this discussion. We should start using what we've been able to get from Gen AI and AI tooling.
So firstly, you owe me £1 for being the first one to say AI in this today. Does anybody want to respond? But literally 30 seconds because we need to wrap up.
100%. If anything, I've seen tools recently from one of the cloud providers. For example, if you're dealing with ancient, more than 20 years of stored procedures that were not documented, it now needs to be translated in SQL to move to a different database. They can do that in a matter of hours using machine learning. So 100%, even, and if I recall properly, you're using a lot of machine learning
We have some, yeah.
within
Yep.
the systems. And that is something that you'll see more and more. Machine learning, in my opinion, or AI, whatever you want to call it, is a tool, is not the end in itself, but definitely. But even in sometimes that comes with a cost. What I just described to you, using machine learning to translate old stored procedures to SQL will cost thousands of pounds per hour. Not per minute, not per day, per hour. This can be a very hefty bill in the end. Is it cheaper than putting a few analysts somewhere when the cost of an analyst is cheap? I don't know.
One thing that I found really interesting, sorry, is I think it was a study by Veracode actually. It's Veracode did the study where they were testing the securities or insecurities of code generated by Gen AI LLMs. I think I'm probably going to get the number a little bit wrong, but I think it was around 70-ish% of the Gen AI LLMs that were tested across, I think, a 3-year period, that were developed over a 3-year period, were creating insecure code. Is that roughly about right?
It's a little bit lower, but not a huge amount lower.
68-ish, yeah. Okay. I think one thing that's really interesting there is we're seeing organizations innovating by using generative AI within their IT engineering and security services. Generating code is one of the practices that they're adopting. One thing that we need to be very careful of to make sure we don't make the same mistakes that we're always making is keep a human in the loop. Have a senior developer there checking the code that is generating, making sure that it's not hallucinating the name of a library that doesn't actually exist. Right?
Or
it happens.
is the thing, right? No?
Yeah, it's a thing now, right? I think the other problem that we've got is because we're using generative AI to generate code, you've got junior developers now who will use Gen AI and they'll become great at prompting as opposed to developing. Let's fast forward 20 years, senior developers now will retire. Who's going to be the next senior developer? The junior developers who are using generative AI. Did they understand it enough to be the human in the loop?
It just means the senior ones have got a decent retirement fund as well, in fairness. So let's close it there. We are running out of time. I'm going to give each of you 10 seconds. That's how close we are on the line, on the time there. And we had an extended period today as well. So 10 seconds for our audience. Practical advice. What can they do as regards this tomorrow morning when they get to their desks? What's the first thing they should do? JC.
If we're talking about CQ coding and CI/CD, just understand what you have there. Not just about your CI/CD, but everything to do with your assets, and do you get the vulnerability for them in a single central place. Do this, you get scared, and then you think of the next step.
Okay.
Stop mine. Asset management is what I was going to say. Get visibility, make sure you understand your attack surface. If you don't understand your attack surface, you can't manage it.
Thank you. Paul.
Okay, to go to something slightly different. We're talking about guardrails, as in the title, security patterns, landing zones. Create your patterns so that developers have got a nice set of guardrails to go between. Create your landing zones, you create the correct infrastructure, your correct security as they put their applications on top.
Thank you. Tiago.
Threat modeling, start with things like Stride, easy and simple at the design phase. That will save you a lot of time and money that you don't need to rebuild. Include legal requirements, data privacy, data sovereignty, and client requirements. Also look at OWASP ISVS. Although it is a tool to look at how you automate the SDLC, also gives you and your developers a really great roadmap about what are the vulnerabilities that you should be addressing on your code, from design to architecture. Think about what you see as OWASP Top 10. This is the full extent of the vulnerabilities that you can have on code. Look at it. There are fantastic tools that will allow you to fully understand if every single part of your software tick all the boxes or not.
Thank you. John, you've now got 3 seconds.
Yes, all of that, but put in place things to ensure you don't make things any worse today.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So thank you to JC, Jay, God, my brain's gone. Paul, Tiago, and John. Thank you very much. All that's left for me to say is our teissTalk mug winner is definitely Rebecca Morgan because she said we all look cool. I think that's fair, right? And our next teissTalk is Thursday next week, the 25th, I think, 24th, 25th, next Thursday at 4 p.m. Please do join us there. So once again, thank you to our panelists and thank you to all of our audiences wherever you are. And don't forget to stay secure, my friends. Should I tell them to go out there to get some drinks?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sorry, give you what?
Good stuff.